today on Ag News Daily.
When we get precipitation like this and we're losing nitrogen from our soil, it's not making it into the crop. We know that in any given year, up to 50% of the nitrogen that we apply could be lost from the soil or not make it into the crop. So thinking about how can we diversify our nitrogen management plan to increase the resiliency of our cropping systems.
Well, welcome back to another edition of the Ag News Daily Show. Delaney Howell and Michelle Stingler here. Tanner is out in the field today, Michelle, so we're giving him the day off.
Well, that's fun. I don't know if he's had a day off recently.
I guess a day off from the podcast doesn't mean a day off from work. So I know a lot of farmers are getting out into the field here in central Iowa. What about up there in Wisconsin, Michelle?
Yeah, same. There's a lot of corn silage being taken out, so soon we'll start corn and soybeans. So yeah, it's crazy to think about. October is just right around the corner.
It is next week, in fact. And heading into the month of October, we're going to continue to see some dry conditions heading into next week. We've certainly seen a lot of dry conditions persisting across the Midwest this week. I've talked to quite a few farmers across the Midwest who have said they could certainly use some rainfall as they're getting into the harvest season. Of course, combine fires are top of mind for growers in some of those drier areas. And in fact, Nebraska is on track to have the driest September on record in terms of rainfall. There is some potential for rainfall due to the remnants of Hurricane Helene, especially near the Ohio River Valley area, which could help alleviate some of the ongoing drought. But the hurricane made landfall on Thursday over the Florida Panhandle, and as it moves northward, it's expected to bring additional rainfall with it. This could impact harvest activities, but also bring some of that much needed moisture to the area. Although winter wheat also could benefit from some increased moisture. We've also been having abnormally high temperatures for this time of year, and dry weather has accelerated corn and soybean maturity. It's also depleted soil moisture reserves, and that remains a significant concern for pastures, some immature crops, and recently planted winter grains. Currently, the U.S. is experiencing about 70% of the country in abnormally dry conditions, according to the National Weather Service's recent outlook there. And there's also growing concerns about low water levels on the Mississippi River, which could impact barge traffic. So I'm sure our friend Mike Steenhoek at the Soybean Transportation Council will have more to come on that subject. Michelle, but what have crops been looking like, and where are we at with our planting harvest progress?
Well, right now we're looking at 14% of the nation's corn crop has been harvested, up 5% from last week. 65% of the crop is still rated good to excellent across the 18 states growing the majority of the nation's corn, according to the latest crop progress report, maintaining the same value as last week and higher than last year's 53%. 13% of the soybean crop has been harvested, up 7% from last week, and 64% of that soybean crop is also rated good to excellent this week, maintaining the same value as last week, but up from last year's 50% at this time, and 96% of spring wheat is harvested, up 1% from last year and from the 5-year average. So some great values there, but what's actually happening in the field will be interesting as it continues these next few weeks.
Absolutely. And friendly reminder to send us your harvest photos or tag us on social media. We'd love to reshare those and just hear how harvest is going from your neck of the woods. But earlier this week, former President Donald Trump made a strong argument against John Deere at a stop in rural Pennsylvania. He issued a strong warning to John Deere regarding tariffs and stated that if the company continues to manufacture its equipment outside of the United States, there may be some trouble ahead for them. If they decide to continue to manufacture in the United States, there would be no tariffs placed if he was elected president. However, if John Deere does continue to relocate their manufacturing to Mexico or elsewhere, he stated he would impose a 200% tariff on any equipment they attempt to sell in the United States. During the visit, President Trump also fielded questions from farmers about energy. He admitted to the group he hadn't realized how reliant farmers were on energy, and after hearing concerns about Chinese subsidized businesses reiterated the need for tariffs to protect American industries. In related news, Vice President Kamala Harris has released a new 2-page policy document outlining her plans for rural America. Farmers can compare the positions of both presidential candidates by reviewing their responses to a questionnaire conducted by the American Farm Bureau Federation, available at fb.org.
Well, on a much more happier note, one FFA alumni member is raising awareness by embarking on a 2,000-mile journey driving a farmable tractor with a camper from the Canadian border to the southern border of Texas. What a fun story. Mark Kane, he's a central Minnesota native, is sharing his adventure on FFA Agri Cruise across the state's Facebook page, where followers can track his progress. Along the way, he's raising donations that will be split between the local, state, and national FFA alumni organizations. He's already been meeting many people, and comments pouring in from the people involved in agriculture across the United States, including a campground he spent time with. The owner of the Kansas campground received his FFA American degree in 1995. He had said in the comments, and that FFA was a great springboard for their farming career. And then continued in his comments saying, somehow it has taken me to owning a campground. Delaney, would you ever consider driving an open cab tractor outside of Iowa?
Yeah, that's a long trip he is on, but definitely for a good cause there. Seems like a guy we should get on the podcast sometime, Michelle. As a fan.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. And I know that he's been doing a lot of interviews too. So just hearing some of his thought processes of why he's doing it and how much fun he's having, I bet it'll be a story to come for many years in its lifetime.
Absolutely. Well, this week in USDA-related news, we saw the USDA release a new $466.5 million investment to, they say, strengthen global food security, as well as $35 million in grants to 15 different independent meat processors to increase processing capacity, expand market opportunities, and create jobs in rural America. The $466.5 million grant dollars are being invested into 2 main programs announced recently at the Clinton Global Initiative 2024 annual meeting. One program is allocating about $248 million to support projects in 9 countries, providing critical school meals and boosting literacy and primary education, especially for girls. But the remaining amount of those funds will be invested in 7 countries to help strengthen their ag systems, adopt climate-smart technologies, and sustainably increase productivity to expand their international trade footprint. Under both programs, the USDA purchases U.S.-grown commodities and provides them to implementing organizations, one of which is the United Nations World Food Program.
Well, it's more USDA news. As mentioned, $35 million are being invested into the final investment in the meat and poultry processing expansion program. Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack emphasized that these investments aim to provide farmers and ranchers with a fair chance to compete in the marketplace, increase local food options, and lower grocery costs for American families. The funding will support the construction of new processing plants, create jobs, and offer business opportunities for local producers and entrepreneurs. One project outside of St. Louis, Missouri, America's Heartland Packaging, will build a large beef processing plant that's LEED certified and will supply beef to domestic and international wholesalers, retailers, pet food companies, and food manufacturers. Another project funded is in Michigan for the Latinx owner-processor Damien's Craft Meats to build a new facility to serve local cattle, hog, goat, and lamb producers.
Yeah, and I think I saw on LinkedIn the other day, good friend of the podcast, Katie Olthoff, who used to be with Iowa Cattlemen's Association and started Chop Local a few years ago. I think they got a grant as a part of this program. So great to see some of those dollars being invested right here in the state of Iowa. One other thing that's top of mind for growers here in the state of Iowa and beyond is the 45Z tax credit that should go into effect starting in January. This week, a bipartisan group of lawmakers introduced the Farmer First Fuel Incentives Act on September 24th, aiming to restrict eligibility for the 45Z clean fuel production tax credits to limit it to renewable fuels only made from domestic feedstocks. The proposal is gaining momentum in both the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate, and it seeks to extend the 45Z tax credit to a full 10 years for the production of clean transportation fuels within the U.S. Originally passed as part of the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act, the credit is intended to boost U.S. energy independence and encourage the production of biofuels using American-grown feedstocks and creating new market opportunities for U.S. farmers. The value of the credits varies depending on the carbon intensity score of the fuel, but is not currently limited to just sourcing domestic feedstocks the way the rule is currently written. However, the U.S. Department of Treasury has yet to even release guidance on how the new 45Z tax credit will be implemented, and that program is set to take effect January 1st. I spoke with Mitchell Hora, CEO and founder of Continuum Ag, and he shared with me that while it's great to have bipartisan support for this 45Z tax credit, and there is an indication of an extension, it's a little bit putting the cart ahead of the horse. We still need strong, friendly rules to get 45Z started, and we need to use that GREET model to enable farmers and biofuel producers to collaborate together. So we still don't have guidance on that 45Z tax credit and how it's going to be implemented. So like he said, putting the cart a little bit ahead of the horse here. And it's great that folks are thinking about protecting U.S. farmers, but we need guidance first on how this is even going to work. According to a press release sent by senators and representatives, the 10-year extension would provide the ethanol industry with both time and financial support needed to build infrastructure that reduces reliance on foreign fuel, opens new markets for U.S. farmers, and boosts ethanol production across the Midwest. So just a little bit of a headline update there, Michelle. I'm sure more to come on that story.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to continue to follow along, and what will come before application in January is a lot for Congress to act upon yet as they close on their legislative session here shortly. But talking about ports, a potential strike by the International Longshoremen's Association could impact operations at more than 3 dozen U.S. ports due to ongoing contract disputes with the United States Maritime Alliance. The current contract is set to expire on September 30th. As of this morning, Friday, September 27th, no agreement has been reached, though the situation is evolving rapidly. Arlen Suderman warned that a strike would likely affect containerized agricultural exports, including products such as soybeans, soy meal, dried distillers grains, chilled or frozen meat, eggs, and other livestock producer products. However, he noted that the impact of bulk commodity movement is expected to be minimal. Suderman also predicted that costs would increase, particularly if there's a blow to meat exports. It would harm the livestock industry and in turn reduce domestic corn and soybean consumption. The contract in question covers all ports from Maine to Texas, which handles approximately 41% of the nation's containerized port volume. According to Suderman, the union is seeking a 77% wage increase over 7 years, while resisting efforts to increase more automation, but shippers are advocating to reduce costs. These demands could drive up freight rates for both U.S. exports and imports in the months and years ahead.
Absolutely. And Michelle, we almost forgot to mention it, but September 30th is the deadline for the next U.S. Farm Bill, with no Farm Bill really in sight. House Agriculture Committee Chairman G.T. Thompson has been meeting with congressional leaders this week on agriculture policy to try to secure last-minute funding on passing the Farm Bill. And earlier this week, he was joined by dozens of House Republicans to press Speaker Mike Johnson to schedule a vote on the 5-year legislation before the end of the year. We also saw on the House side that he's been meeting there with some folks as well. House Agriculture Committee Ranking Member David Scott and Senate Agriculture Committee Chair Debbie Stabenow are also working on the House side to try to get something passed here. It sounds like we're likely going to see kind of a short-term bill once again pass, an extension pass, likely not the full farm bill here, as we have 3 days until that technically expires. So I'm sure we'll get movement on that here Friday afternoon before we head into the weekend.
But it raises the question, what will happen, right?
Absolutely. It absolutely does. But we've had a great time catching up with folks at Farm Progress Show, and we want to continue to air those great conversations that we had today. We talked to a lot of forward-thinking companies and organizations at Farm Progress Show, one of which was Pivot Bio. So let's turn it over to a conversation now with them. We're about to have a great conversation here with Dr. Clayton Nevins from Pivot Bio. Clayton, thanks for joining us as a senior agronomic scientist for Pivot Bio. I'm sure you get to see a lot of cool and unique things, which we're going to dive into here in just a little bit. But I'd love to start with your background, because before we started recording, you were sharing that you've had kind of an interesting path to get into nitrogen-focused research that you're doing here today at Pivot Bio.
Absolutely. So thank you very much. I'm really excited to be up here with you today. So a little bit about myself and my background. I'm originally from West Central Indiana. I studied nitrogen management in corn and winter wheat at Purdue University as an undergraduate and a master's student. And then I really wanted to understand nitrogen management in as many cropping systems as I could. So for my PhD, I went south to the University of Florida and studied nitrogen management in citrus. In all of these systems, though, what I was most interested in is how can microbes, nitrogen-fixing microbes, supply nitrogen to our crops? So trying to calculate how much nitrogen they're supplying and when that nitrogen is being supplied to the crops. And the research that I did in academia and at those universities aligned perfectly with what Pivot Bio was researching. And I saw Pivot Bio as the company that was going to be able to actually commercialize and make products out of these microbes and help us increase the resiliency and the diversity of our nitrogen management plans. And so that's what led me to Pivot Bio, and I've been with Pivot for about 4 years now.
When we think about the 2024 growing season, what were some of those key challenges and, what Pivot Bio was seeing?
Yeah, so some of the key challenges that growers experienced this year really was related to precipitation when it comes to nitrogen management. So especially true this year, we saw increased amounts of rainfall across the Corn Belt, really across the entire United States. And when we saw those intense rain events, we lost nitrogen from the soil. So nitrogen's not making it into the crop and supporting our yield potential. For example, we have nitrogen that's leaching through the soil profile, or volatilizing or denitrifying into the air, so leaving the soil as a gas, or even running off the field when we get intense amounts of rain in a short period of time. And so I think that really is one of the biggest challenges that growers face this year, losing nitrogen from the soil.
And I'm curious to know, in some of the research that you've done through your PhD, through your undergrad, looking at years like 2024, when we saw such intense leaching, as you mentioned, have you seen or did you do any sort of testing that led you to really being able to help maybe provide some answers to growers here in 2024?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we get precipitation like this and we're losing nitrogen from our soil, it's not making it into the crop. We know that in any given year, up to 50% of the nitrogen that we apply could be lost from the soil or not make it into the crop. So thinking about how can we diversify our nitrogen management plan to increase the resiliency of our cropping systems. And really, Pivot Bio has developed a product, a microbial nitrogen source that can help us do that. So at Pivot Bio, our commercial product for corn is Pivot Bio Proven 40. It's nitrogen-fixing microbes that we've gene-edited so that they continuously take nitrogen out of the air and supply it to the corn crop when the crop needs it the most.
I got to ask a couple of follow-up questions there, just in case we have people that maybe aren't quite as heavy science backgrounds. Microbial activity, you mentioned that. You mentioned gene editing. Break those terms down for us a little bit more and how Pivot Bio's product really interacts in that space.
Absolutely. So Pivot Bio's gene-edited microbes are applied as a seed coating or a liquid in the furrow at planting. And then they colonize the roots of the crop as that crop starts to grow and supply nitrogen to the crop. So these microbes are naturally occurring in the soil. What we've done is we've taken them out of the soil, found these naturally occurring microbes, and then we've genetically engineered them so that they increase the amount of nitrogen that they fix, and they continually fix that nitrogen and spit it out and give it to the crop. So, like I said, they're naturally occurring in soil. They like to do this anyway, but it's really energy intensive, and if there's already nitrogen there, they don't do it. What we've done is we said, okay, always make nitrogen, and always provide that to the crop when the crop needs it.
And we're talking about the addition. How does that really impact what we're seeing at yield time? We can add so many things to our crops to try to make them better, but what is this actually doing?
Yeah. So by including Pivot Bio Proven 40 in your nitrogen management plan, you're automatically diversifying your nitrogen plan, and you're increasing the resiliency of your crop. So an example of this is the research we've done the last 3 years with a lot of our grower customers. We've had on-farm trials at over 3,000 fields across the United States and 30 different states, where we're looking at the impact of Pivot Bio Proven 40 on crop health compared to areas of the field where we didn't apply the product. And what we found is that when we replace a portion of our traditional nitrogen with Proven 40 and include this microbial nitrogen as the foundation of your nitrogen management plan, we're seeing 9% more nitrogen in the crop. So that's increasing our crop health. It's increasing total nutrient uptake of the crop. It's helping us protect our yield potential at the end of the day. And because this nitrogen is nearly 100% efficient compared to other nitrogen in the soil, which is we can lose half of it. That means we're increasing our ROI of our total nitrogen management plan.
Yeah, and I think that ROI piece is so big, especially as we look at maybe years like 24, 25, when farmers are evaluating how do I either increase yields or cut costs to be able to kind of weather this commodity market challenge that we have ahead of us here. As you look at that ROI, does the Pivot Bio product also lead to potentially decreased inputs, given that, the nitrogen is hopefully going to be there maybe at a higher level, and you're not going to have to go in and do some of that application to apply that yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we found really is that our grower customers are trusting Pivot Bio to increase the health of their crops, right? Even this year, we have a 91% customer satisfaction rating from our customers. And it's because we are improving their nitrogen management plan, diversifying their nitrogen management plan by including Pivot Bio Proven 40 in that. And when they're using it as the foundation of their plan, we're really recommending that you're replacing a portion of those inputs. So that nitrogen that might otherwise be leaky from the system, volatilize into the air, leach to the soil profile, you can replace that with this more resilient form of nitrogen, this microbial nitrogen that's right there on the roots. So when I think of nitrogen management, I'm thinking about nitrogen at the right place. So this microbial nitrogen, the microbes live on the roots, supplying nitrogen right on the roots where the crop can take it up. And I think about the right time of nitrogen. So as that corn plant develops, the microbes are providing nitrogen to the plant when the crop needs it the most during those peak vegetative growth stages, when corn nitrogen demand is the highest.
Now, you keep mentioning crop resiliency. How important is that in the crop itself, and what is crop resiliency defined by you?
Yeah, so when I'm thinking about crop resiliency, I'm thinking about the ability of that crop to withstand extreme weather events like we've seen this year in 2024, right? So having that reliable source of nitrogen, putting more nitrogen into the plant can help that plant withstand ability. It can help it when we have extreme precipitation, so we're losing a lot of nitrogen from the soil really quickly. It helps it when we're thinking about maintaining and setting that yield potential early in the growing season. So V6 or V8, when nitrogen demand really starts to increase for the crop, we've got a spoon-fed source of nitrogen right there on the roots for that corn crop.
I think that's a great segue into one of my last questions. When you think about extreme weather, you think about crop resiliency. 2024 was an interesting year, to say the least. Everyone seems to be. But as we think about maybe the leaching or some of the issues we had this year and where Pivot Bio fit into that nitrogen management plan, how does that set growers up for 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, I think what we've seen in 2024 is just how much of an impact including Proven 40 in that foundational piece of your nitrogen management plan can have on being able to increase the standability of that crop and to get more nitrogen into that crop when your crop needs it the most. So as we're thinking towards 2025, now is a really good time. We're starting to think about fall anhydrous applications. So are we in a situation where we could replace 30 or 40 pounds of that fall anhydrous application with a nitrogen that's going to be there when the crop needs it the most? So when a crop is growing, we've got that Pivot Bio microbial nitrogen right on the roots supplying nitrogen when that crop needs it.
What an insightful discussion we had here this morning. What else would you like to add?
Yeah, I think I would just add that I want growers to know that there are options to diversify our nitrogen management plans to increase the resiliency of our cropping systems. And one way to do that is including Pivot Bio Proven 40 in your corn nitrogen management plan. I'd also add that, at Pivot Bio, we really understand the evolving financial dynamics of the ag landscape right now. And because of that, we really want to support growers, and to do that, we've lowered our price in 2025, and alongside that, we have a 0% financing program.
I'm going to say that's pretty unique to see an input company actually lower prices. It feels like farmers are always thinking, when are companies going to lower? So I appreciate you calling that out. If any of our listeners or viewers want to find out more information about Pivot Bio, how to get it integrated into their next year's crop cycle, where can they go to find more information?
You can find your local representative at pivotbio.com.
Great. Well, Clayton, thanks so much for joining us. We certainly appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Well, Delaney, what's happening in markets this week?
Well, we certainly had some big news this week as the People's Bank of China unveiled a massive stimulus program in coordination with China's Securities Regulation Commission and the National Financial Regulatory Administration. In all, the stimulus program provides cuts to the bank's reserve requirements by 50 basis points, which is expected to inject about 1 trillion yuan, or about $147 billion, into China's economy, really trying to hit some specific GDP numbers here as we wrap up the third quarter. Taking a look on the livestock side, the U.S. hog inventory report was released this week as of September 1. There were 76.5 million hogs and pigs on U.S. farms, up slightly from September of 2023 and up 2% from June 1st of 2024 when the last quarterly report was released. Some other interesting findings in the report noted that of those 76.5 million hogs and pigs, 70.4 million were hogs that were market hogs, and the remaining about 6 million were breeding stock there. In the energy sector this week, U.S. commercial crude oil inventories, excluding the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, dropped by 4.5 million barrels to 413 million barrels for the week ending September 20th, putting them roughly 5% below the 5-year average for this week of the year. Gasoline stocks fell by 1.5 billion barrels, leaving them 1% below seasonal levels, and ethanol stocks slipped to 23.5 million barrels last week as processors were shutting down for some seasonal maintenance ahead of new corn crops hitting the pipeline, down 23.5 million barrels from the previous week, but still above the 20 million barrels on hand a year ago. We also saw ethanol production dropped to 994,000 barrels per day in the week ending September 20th. As, like I said, processors are really getting ahead of things, doing some maintenance here before we see a big corn crop coming in the door. In the grain markets this week, soybeans took a big tumble on Thursday, down 12.25 cents in the November new crop contract after 3 consecutive days of gains. But despite stronger export sales, we saw that massive pullback here on Thursday. Heading into the trade here this morning, Michelle, as we're recording today's episode, looks like soybeans were trading kind of with neutral to maybe a little bit in the green here. So it'll be interesting to see how we wrap up this Friday's trading session. And corn continues its choppy trade this week. Still seeing support at that market low that was put in August, late August there. But traders are still expecting to see a fairly limited upside here due to the large crop and high yields that are already starting to roll in from harvest season. So that's a quick look at the markets today. I'm sure we're going to see a lot more growers take to the fields this weekend if they're not already in the field. And I'm expecting to see some big jumps next week on our crop progress report when we report on them next Friday.
And beyond the soybean and corn crop that farmers are harvesting, there's a lot of specialty crops as well. It's officially fall. So is there anything that you like to do at this time of the year beyond helping here and there with harvest?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like this time of year, it's focusing on harvest, making sure that things are running here smoothly at home, whether that's making meals or making sure Blaine has what he needs. Or honestly, I like to get out too and shoot just B-roll and drone footage of guys out in the combine harvesting. So it's a good time of year just to get some of that fun stuff in the books too. But I'm jealous of you being up there in Wisconsin. You guys have maybe a few more crops that you're harvesting than what we have here in Iowa. So what are some of the crops that you're watching this time of year, Michelle?
I know I keep seeing some pictures about potato harvest. I think that's about to wrap up. So that's pretty cool. I like to go in fall time to have my fair share of apple pies. There's some apple orchards here. So trying to go pick some apples, and then of course picking some pumpkins and having some of that agritourism. That's always fun. So I love to still carve pumpkins while I'm still a bit old, I guess you could say. I like to still do it or try it with my sisters. So that's always a good fall time. But getting outside, it's not cold yet, which is a bit surprising for this time of the year, but it's really nice to get outside and to, of course, have some fun.
Absolutely. Well, we hope that growers have fun this weekend in the combine. Thanks for tuning in with us, and be sure to tune back in with us next week. If you're getting a little bored in the combine, though, be sure to check us out on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and TikTok. So be sure to find us there at Ag News Daily. But Michelle, what do you say we let the people go for today?
Let's let them go.